Hey everyone, I'm Ferdinand and I'm the Gathering Director here at the River Church at our Holly location. Thanks for checking out one of our messages today. We would love to get connected with you and your family. One easy way to do that is to text River Connect, one word, to 97,000, or you can visit our website at theriverchurch.cc to learn more about us and our upcoming events. If you'd like to give to the River Church today, you can text the amount you want to give to 84321, or you can visit our website and click the Give tab at the top of the page. Thanks again for joining us, and we hope you enjoyed the message today.
So our series in Proverbs, it's been an interesting study for me. I enjoy it. But what intrigues me so much about Proverbs is that the wisdom is really super simple. Like, it lays everything out. Simple, do this, don't do this, make this good choice, watch out for this. But the challenge then comes into, what do we do with that? Because I'm going to say very little information over this summer that we probably haven't heard or that we probably don't know, or just common sense advice. But the challenge comes down to, first of all, the challenge in preparing it. As I'm studying all week, I feel like I'm banging my head on the table because it's right there and it's so simple, and it's just like, just teach this simple wisdom. It's right here, just teach it. But then for us, the challenge becomes, it's so simple, it's right there, we can read it, but what do we do with it? So that's, if I'm open and honest, like my challenge in preparing this each week is like, it's right there. It's simple. Just read it and just talk about it. Not digging deep. I mean, it's there. It's the wisdom of Solomon. But anyways, today in our journey as we go through Proverbs, the character that we're going to look at is the simple. And when I hear simple, my first thought of like a simple person is living a simple, non-complicated life. And I'm like, that sounds fantastic. Like my dream would be to be deep in the wilderness of Alaska with my family. You can think I'm crazy, whatever, I don't care. Wilderness of Alaska, where I take in some hand tools, I chop down some trees, I build a house. I have no running water. I have no electricity. I get to chuck my cell phone in the river as I'm going into the wilderness, and I stay there and live off the land. Like when I think simple, I'm on board with that. Like sign me up for that. It might only be fun for 2 days, but I'm down. Like I am completely in. But when we look at the simple in Proverbs, that's not the simple life that we're talking about. The simple that we're looking at has knowledge, or they see knowledge, kind of like what I was talking about at the beginning. Like there's all this wisdom just like out there for us in Proverbs. So it's out there. They have knowledge and instruction right in front of them, laying in front of them. And the simple, their response to all that wisdom from the Lord is to ignore it or to reject it, to reject the path of wisdom, and then continually go down these trails of folly or foolishness. It's like wisdom is this massive, lighted, glowing billboard, this road sign just screaming, go this way. Here is wisdom. Here is wisdom. Just this big flashing light, go this way. And the simple walks up to that road sign, and they're like, nah, I'm going to go this way. Here's wisdom right in front of us. Walk down it, even a nice sign. Here's the wise way. And we're like, yeah, that looks like a lot of work. I'm just going to go down this simple path. Proverbs chapter 1, verses 20 to 22. Wisdom cries aloud in the street. So next Sunday, we're going to be looking at wisdom. So I'm trying to be careful to not give too much away from my sermon next week, because I've got to talk to you again next week for 30 minutes. But I want us to see this picture of wisdom crying aloud in the street. Wisdom just flashing on this sign. Here's the wise thing. Here's the wise choice. Here's the path to go down. In the markets, she raises her voice. At the head of the noisy streets, she cries out. At the entrance of the city gates, she speaks. And she says, how long, O simple ones, will you love being simple? Great question. So often, on this simple path, why in the world don't we choose wisdom? Why do we choose folly? Wisdom yelling at us. When I was 15 years old, my dad was like, Ben, I found a first car for you. I'm like, sweet, because he had a '83 Chevette he was going to pass down to me. And I'm like, maybe we can find something a little better, Dad. So he brings home this 85 S10 four-wheel drive Blazer that had been in a wonderful car accident and looked like a bulldozer ran over it. He's like, here you go. Well, my dad worked at a body shop, so I had high hope for this. So I got a custom pick. I put a 91 grill in it. Like, I talked about that for a year. Like, it was wonderful. And it was a 4-cylinder engine, so I wasn't going to go too fast. Definitely never go too fast in that thing. But we got to walk through this process of we painted it. It looked black, but he put this cherry color into it, so in the sun, I mean, it was awesome. It was still an 85 S10 Blazer, I had to tell myself. I went through a phase where I had little tiny tires on it. I don't know how to appropriately describe that without offending anyone, but it was horrible. And then I was like, I want bigger tires, so I found some bigger tires in the trash or something, so I had these 32s on it. Now it really went slow trying to push these big tires. But I had like Holstein-looking seat covers in there. So riding around in this cow, basically. I had cow pillows in the back seat. The dashboard I painted white and black, like super classy, right? But I got that, I think I was 16 or 17. We finally got it done. And then I decided I'm going to go to college in California. I lived in Corona, the house I live in now. College in California is pretty darn far away. But I wanted a car out there, so I decided I'm going to take this out west. I'm going to drive this from Michigan all the way to California. So my family loaded up in their car, loaded up in my truck. Maggie even went with us, my wife now. We were dating at that time, so she went with our family. We drove out there and stopped in Colorado for a little bit and then made this long journey. Anybody ever driven from Colorado through the desert to get to California? We won't even talk about that, but through this, in Utah, I'll get to where I'm trying to get, I'm sorry. In Utah, there's this stretch of road where there are no services, no gas, nothing. Not a rest, nothing, absolutely nothing for 100 and, it varies where your source is, but 106 to 110 miles. Well, my cruising range for my gas tank was 150 miles. My gas gauge did not work. It's not going where you think it goes, don't worry. And it's through the desert. In an 85 S10 Blazer, like that's a bad choice if there's a gas station at every exit to make that drive. So planning for this trip, I knew that I had to make sure, like I had printed out maps. I mean, this is before cell phones even did anything. You paid by the minute for that stuff, right? And you're not getting on the internet. So my whole planning of this trip was like, I cannot run out of gas. I absolutely cannot run out of gas because I've seen the Western movies. I've seen what happens to cowboys when they get stuck in the desert. I'm not dying in the desert because my 85 S10 Blazer. But anyways, ridiculous story, but we made this trip. We tried to drive early in the morning so it wasn't so hot. I mean, it was just like driving a sauna through the desert. But we made it. We got gas before, and you pay $6 extra a gallon because it's the last gas station in the world, apparently. And then you get to the end, and they beat you up on the backside again. But we made it. We made it to college. And then after college, I did that trip again, but back to Michigan. And Aaron actually made that trip with me. We did a fishing trip. Details you don't need to know. But I made that trip with that ridiculous Blazer 8 times or something ridiculous like that. But every time I did that trip, I knew that there was this point, there was this choice of wisdom I had to make where I had to stop. I had to get gas so I didn't end up dead in the desert because my truck was barely going to make it. But we limped through, we made it. There was so much urgency, though, to be looking, to be waiting, to be reading for these signs of warning that, hey, you better get gas here because there's not going to be any gas for 110 more miles. So I paid close attention to that. And as we read Proverbs, as we look through Proverbs, as we go through these different studies and these different details, you can feel the urgency of the author. And them yelling, them screaming, choose wisdom. Choose to stop being simple. Wisdom is right in front of us. Wisdom is right in front of you. Make the choice to not be simple. And here's why. Here's why we need to make this choice to not be simple. If you choose this path, path of folly, this is the result. And we'll look at some of the result today. But with more urgency than the importance of not running out of gas. I mean, if I was smart, I would have just taken a gas can and tied it on the roof of my truck or something. But we see in Proverbs, we see this cry, we see this call, choose the wise path. Ultimately, your life is at stake. Make the choice to head to wisdom. Stop being simple. It should be simple common sense. Make this choice. And I think of seeking wisdom and talking with wisdom. There's so many people who have lived through stuff that we could seek wisdom from. And I think of people who are more mature in age, them looking back and saying, man, I wish I had chosen wisdom here. I wish I had chosen to not be simple here. And they could tell you, yep, they could raise their hand, yep, choose wisdom. I have so many scars, I have so much pain from my path when the right choice, when the easy choice, when the life-giving choice was right in front of me. And I was like, I'm going to be simple. I'm going to walk down this trail of folly. It seems like more fun. As we're walking down it, we're probably not going to call it the trail of folly, right? We're going to be like, looks like more fun. Proverbs chapter 4, starting in verse number 10. Hear, my son, and accept my words, that the years of your life may be many. I have taught you the way of wisdom. I have led you in the paths of uprightness. When you walk, your step will not be hampered, and if you run, you will not stumble. Keep hold of instruction. Do not let go. Guard her, for she is your life. Do not enter the path of the wicked, and do not walk in the way of evil. Avoid it. Do not go on it. Turn away from it and pass on. For they cannot sleep unless they have done wrong. They are robbed of sleep unless they have made someone stumble. For they eat the bread of wickedness and drink the wine of violence. But the path of the righteous is like the light of dawn, which shines brighter and brighter until full day. The way of the wicked is like deep darkness. They do not know over what they stumble. And if you've lived through, if you've experienced those times in your life when here's the wise choice, here's the simple choice that leads to folly, and you choose folly or you've chosen folly, you can give that experience of, man, it's hard to recover from that bad choice. It's a battle to get out of that choice of foolishness. I wish I had listened to wisdom. I wish I had listened. I wish I had followed advice, this simple instruction laid out in front of me. I wish I had paid attention. Now, with all that talk in there of waiting for the light and stumbling in the darkness and following wisdom and seeing what's in front of us and making good choices. It took me back about 4 or 5 years ago when we still lived out west. One of my favorite things to do in Colorado was come September to chase elk around the mountains. And it had been a really slow, this was my last year actually to hunt out there. It had been a really slow, dry, hot year. And the elk are laying somewhere in the shade, couldn't find them. Well, I start to watch the weather and hear of this massive cold front, this massive rainstorm coming in. And in my mind, I'm like, that's it. I got to be out in the mountains when that big storm comes, because as it gets colder, as the rain comes, like the elk are going to be out and about, and this is my chance. So I go to this place I had only been to once before, and before I leave, I'm like, hey, Maggie, I'm going to go hunting by myself, and it's possible I'm not going to come home tonight. It may be tomorrow. I'm so glad I said that. It may be tomorrow, so don't worry about me. I'll be fine. And I know cell service, nothing. You're in the mountains, like you don't see people, nothing. It's pretty wonderful. So I go on this trip. I park my truck. I start on this trail, and I see these black clouds coming in. And the warning sign is like, what are you doing? There's a huge storm. There's lightning. You're going to be on top of a mountain. Like, people get struck by lightning all the time in that situation. I'm like, nah, there's going to be elk. So I keep going. A few miles back in there and getting prime time. The elk are going to be coming out and bugling and all that stuff. And I start to feel a few raindrops. I'm like, okay, just a little farther. Go down even farther, even deeper. No clue where I am. I'm in new territory, but I knew there was this spot I wanted to get to. And then all of a sudden, the sky just breaks loose. Just pouring, and I'm like, oh, this is wonderful. So I get under this tree, which is great when it's thundering and lightning, right? Go stand under a tree, and thunder is clapping, and it's close. I mean, you can see it and feel it. And then it kind of blows over, and it opens up. I'm like, sweet, I'm back to hunting. I'll keep going farther and farther away to a place I don't know. And I get in farther, starts to get more dark, and then I just see them coming. But then I hear elk bugling, and I'm like, that's where I need to be. Keep going further. And I get in close and start bugling, and then the sky, I mean, it's pouring, it's raining. At this point, it's dark, and I had planned on using the stars to kind of navigate where my truck was, but when it's cloudy and raining, there's not a whole lot of stars to see. So I'm like, fantastic. I think my truck's over that mountain. That'll be a shortcut. So I just take off, climb over this mountain, drop down the backside, and it was just deadfall trees. There's trees everywhere. I can't move. It's raining. I'm soaking wet. I told you a cold front was coming. And in Colorado, it can be 15 in the morning, 90 in the afternoon, and be back down in snow the next night because you're up in the mountains. So I'm like, this is really, really bad. I need to get where I need to go. So I fumble through that, get to where I kind of think my truck is, and my truck was nowhere to be found. So I'm like, oh, I'll just keep walking. I am soaking, and I'm walking. It kind of flattens out. I'm walking in this field, and all of a sudden, I step in this big, giant hole that I couldn't see. It's dark. So I fall in this hole, and I manage to, catch myself by my elbows, and I'm like, this is really bad. I'm in a bad, bad spot. I ignored all these warning signs all along the way. How did I get myself here? A lot of thoughts going through my head about my poor family when I fall in a hole and I'm dead and they never find, all that thought. Like, why was I so simple? And I crawl out of this hole and it gets worse and more bad stuff happens and I'm falling, I'm stumbling, and I make this choice. I'm just going to find a tree. I'm going to try to get my clothes dried out. I was smart enough to take matches and stuff, so I built this fire under this tree, and freezing cold, but I built this fire. I warmed up, got my clothes dry. I was like, I'll just sleep here. And, in the morning it's light. It'll be easy to walk out of there. So you don't get much sleep in that situation. But the sun starts to rise. It starts to get light. I'm like, okay, just like Proverbs talks about, you start to see the light. You start to have hope. Like, I got myself in this bad, horrible spot through bad, horrible decisions that I didn't pay attention to all the obvious signs where all of you, as I'm telling this story, you're probably like, you're an idiot. Why didn't you take a GPS? Why didn't you take someone with you? What are you doing? Easy for you to see, but at the time I was simple and I regretted it that morning. But then, I'll try to go faster. I get out from under the tree, and that night, you remember it was raining, so it was muddy. That night, a bear had been walking around my tree, and it was just a black bear, so massive track, walking around I had danger so close to me that I couldn't see in the darkness. I mean, I don't even want to paint this scene how that could have been. Why? Because I chose to ignore all these signs of wisdom, everything I knew, all these simple choices that I should have followed to not get myself in this bad situation. But the sun came up and I walked right out. I walked right to my truck. I wasn't lost. I just wasn't where I thought I was, right? I got out of there. I was fine. I blew off wisdom every time that it shouted at me, and it could have cost me dearly. It could have cost my family dearly. And when I finally listened and got myself under control and built the fire and got warm and waited for light, I was able to get out of there. I should have listened way sooner to wisdom. Ridiculous story of foolishness, right? Fun story to tell, maybe. Have you ever been there, not in hunting necessarily, but in life, where you find yourself in a place where wisdom has been crying all around you? Here's the wise choice. Go down this way. Make this choice. Wise people around you that have been through difficult things are telling you, here's the wise thing. Make this choice. I recommend you don't do that. And we're like, nah, I'm going to go down this path. It seems better. It seems more fun. Have you ever been there? Then you get there and you're like, oh man, why didn't I listen sooner? And your life's falling apart around you and you're just frustrated on so many levels. Why did I follow the simple path? Why didn't I listen to wisdom? And then to get really real, are you there now? In your life, making these bad choices, and maybe you're still in a spot where you can maybe hide from it, but you're still walking down this, or you can fool other people that you're not walking down this trail of folly and you're not burning your life down and you're not making these choices. Have you been there? Are you there? Are you teetering on the edge of, man, should I follow wisdom or should I follow folly? Should I be simple here and keep going down this path? I just wonder, let's be real. Let's consider it. Where are you at? Are you ignoring cries of wisdom right now? Just simply walking down this path of folly. And I caution, when you get down there, are you going to wish, man, I should have listened to wisdom? How did I get myself in this place? How am I going to get out of it? What if the bear eats me and my family never finds me? It's real. Proverbs 9:16 says, whoever is simple, let him turn in here. And it's in a negative sense that Proverbs is talking about it here. Because when we're simple, when we're making simple, foolish choices, the voice of folly is also yelling. And here's what happens down to verse 18 of Proverbs 9. But he does not know that the dead are there, that her guests are in the depths of Sheol. This thought of ignoring wisdom, of staying simple, of following foolishness. Oh yeah, this looks like a great idea. And little do we know until we get there and we get in too deep that we find out this is not a place I want to be. And then we're crawling and we're digging out and we're regretting and we're wishing that we had listened to the voice of wisdom. The other side of that, the prudent sees danger and hides himself. But the simple go on and suffer for it. Proverbs 14:15 and 16, the simple believes everything, but the prudent gives thought to his steps. One who is wise is cautious and turns away from evil, but a fool is reckless and careless. So today, as we think of this simple thought of not being simple, I encourage you to check yourself. Check every aspect of your life. Am I walking as the simple down the path of destruction? Am I making good choices here? I see wisdom, I hear wisdom, I know wise people. Or am I walking down this path of destruction? Proverbs chapter 4, starting in verse 20. My son, be attentive to my words. Incline your ear to my sayings. Let them not escape from your sight. Keep them within your heart. For they are life to those who find them, and healing to all their flesh. Keep your heart with all vigilance, for from it flow the springs of life. Put away from you crooked speech, and put devious talk far from you. Let your eyes look directly forward, and your gaze be straight before you. Ponder the path of your feet, then all your ways will be sure. Do not swerve to the right or to the left. Turn your foot away from evil. And I think of that, and I think of life, I think of my life, I think of the choices and decisions I make, I think of my kids as they're trying to navigate through life. I mean, we have 4 years to 39 years represented in my house. So all these different life phases where simple choices or wise choices will look different to all of us. And as I think of simple, how is this broken down? How can I not find myself stuck in simplicity, stuck in folly? Every day is a series of choices, right? We make decisions. We have so much freedom to make so many decisions all day. As we're making those decisions, are we weighing it in the balance of, is this folly or is this wise? Do we think it through? As we try and navigate through the different choices in life, make sure that the Lord has your heart. Right? Isn't that where we started out with this whole series? Was who the Lord is, that we should fear him, recognize he is the authority, he knows what's wise. Make sure the Lord has your heart and he is the one driving your decisions and your choices. Proverbs 1:7, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge. Fools despise wisdom and instruction. And then in thinking through that, you'll have a hard time following the Lord's wisdom without the Lord in your life. That sounds so simple to say. But if we want to follow the Lord's wisdom, if we want to truly recognize who the Lord is, we need to make sure he is in our life, that we have that relationship with him, that we recognize, we know that we need the Lord, that we know that he is holy and perfect and just and righteous, and we are not, which therefore is our tendency to follow down folly or to make the simple choice. So I'd encourage you, if the Lord is not in your life, if you don't know the Lord, if you haven't believed in the fact that he is the one that offers salvation, if he's the one that died and paid your sin debt, if you're not looking to him as the ruler, as the Lord of your life, you're going to have a very hard time following his wisdom. So I'd encourage you, if you're at a place in your life where you're seeking wisdom, where you're trying to dig out of simplicity and folly, step number one, look to the Lord. Call on him to save you, to forgive you, and to lead you. He paid the price for our sins. He died, he rose again, and he offers life and salvation. We need the Lord. Make sure the Lord has your heart. Diligently guard your heart. Proverbs 4:23, keep your heart with all vigilance, for from it flow the springs of life. Proverbs 23:19, hear my son and be wise and direct your heart in the way. Proverbs 7:25, let not your heart turn aside to her ways. Do not stray into her paths. It's so easy. It can be so easy to let our hearts wander. Has anyone else figured that out? Like if you're not careful, it's easy to start going down a path that is not wise. Am I the only one that's like, I need to make sure I'm focusing on the Lord and his wisdom. We must keep watch. We must pay attention. Recognizing here is wisdom. It's screaming, it's crying. Making the choice to follow wisdom. Having daily diligence to avoid the path of the simple. Because the path of folly, the path of the simple, can easily take you to a place that you never intended to be. It can bring hurt to people that you never intended to hurt. You ever experienced that? Made a bad choice, and all of a sudden you see your poor kids dealing with the consequences? Or you see innocent people hurting because of your choice to not follow wisdom. I mean, the path of folly can just cost you things that you never wanted to give up, you never thought you would give up. Wisdom is crying. Folly is giving you an opportunity. Standing there in simplicity, rejecting the voice of wisdom will take you down the path of folly. One more story. I know I've had a lot of stories. I'll try to hurry through this. But in college, my freshman year, our coaches of our basketball team had this great idea. I say great as sarcastically as I possibly can. They had this great idea for this team building, team bonding activity. We're going to climb Mount Whitney together. I believe it's the tallest mountain in the continental United States, 14,494, 501 feet. It's a tall, tall mountain. Well, we lived in the desert, very close to sea level. So I think it was 2,000 feet where we lived, going up to 14,500 feet. Like, your body goes through some difficult things going from sea level to really high up in the air. I don't know if you ever experienced, there's this thing called altitude sickness. But we're college athletes. Our coaches are brilliant men. And they say, here's this team activity. We're going to climb this mountain. I think it's 20 miles round trip. And it's going to be great. You're going to love it, guys. And you're going to be so much closer as a team. And so they wake us up, come get us early morning. Couldn't tell you what time it is. We drive up into the mountains several hours away. And in preparing for this trip, I'm like, what should we wear? How should we prepare? I mean, we're college kids. How do we prepare for this, coach? And they're like, maybe bring some water, maybe some snacks. 20-mile trip. Thankfully, I had grown up in the mountains. We lived in the mountains for a few summers when I was a kid, and I was familiar that, remember the temperature swings I talked to you about? I was familiar that it can snow on the 4th of July. So I'm like, well, I'm going to throw a hoodie in my bag. So I had a hoodie, and then I brought jugs of water, and I brought a bunch of cans of tuna fish. And I had my hunting pack, thankfully. But all the other guys, I mean, they weren't prepared at all. And we start on this trip, and a few hours in, one of the managers peels off, which is fine. He's a manager. Don't expect him to be in college shape, right? So we keep going, and people start to slow down, and the groups kind of separate, and as competitive as I am, I'm making it to the top. I'm doing this. We keep going, and all of a sudden, I think it's around 10,000 feet, hours into this ridiculous trip, I start to get the headache. Anybody ever experienced altitude sickness? Just start getting this headache, but I can I think there's a summit. This trip, most people take multiple days and they take a tent and stuff. So we keep going, and I mean, we are just miserable. But I'm going to make it. I'm going to get there. Finally, a few of us guys make it to the summit of this mountain, and I mean, it's awesome. It is awesome. They're looking over all the mountain ranges. There's a little shack up there, and then there's a little bin or something with a register book, like you're at a wedding. And people sign it for it. So I open it up and I sign my name, and I'm like, I can't believe people do this for fun. Like, that was my comment. But we get up there. Remember I told you our coaches were like, it's not going to be cold. It was snowing, blowing snow, free. Everybody's just freezing. We're in shorts and freezing, and our heads hurt. Like, I mean, there's guys that are sick. The coaches aren't making it to the top. And then we get there, and it's like such bad choices all along the way. One of our coaches' mottos when we were thirsty, I don't know if this is appropriate, but when we'd get thirsty in practice, he said, you're thirsty, drink your spit. So like, that's the mentality. But we do it, and then we're just miserable, and guys hadn't brought enough water, and just headache, and just horrible. I cannot wait to get down. I'm in a bad spot. Never wanted to be there in the first place. But we were there. So what do? You're miserable. Like, you just want to lay down and not wake up is kind of where you're at. So I start coming down, and the headache is just worse and worse. And I'm like, this is nonsense. I'm not staying with these guys anymore. I am running. I don't care where the trail is. I am bombing down this mountain. So I just started running and jumping over pathways and switchbacks, and I'm getting out of there. Finally, I get below the altitude line, and my headache kind of relieves, and then I get back to the van, and I sat there for an hour and a half waiting for the next person to get. I was so miserable that I had to get out of there, running as fast as I could to get down. And just as I was, ridiculous story again, I know, but as I'm thinking about folly, if we reject wisdom, if we stay in simplicity, if we neglect where we know we should be, and we end up in this spot where we don't want to be, where we're going to hurt people, where we know that we shouldn't be, if we're down this trail of folly, I want to encourage you to turn around and run as fast as you can out of that situation of folly and get back to where you know you need to be. Don't stay in the path of the simple. Don't be comfortable in the spot of the simple. Wisdom is crying. Listen to wisdom. Get out of the folly that you've got yourself into. Proverbs 27:12. The prudent sees danger and hides himself, but the simple go on and suffer for it. I would encourage us daily as we're making these choices. Choose wisdom. Run from simplicity. Seek help along the way. Look to the Lord along the way. And the simple wisdom that we find in Proverbs, in the Lord's Word, let's just pay attention to it and actually listen to it and do what it says. God's so good. He's there to help us. He's given us the wisdom and the instruction. Let's make the simple choice to run from simplicity. Let's pray together.